I'm Huon Hooke, and this is The Real Review. The wine we're tasting today is Hentley Farm Riesling, 2020 vintage, from the Eden Valley. Hentley Farm is a relatively new producer in the Barossa Valley. I think its first vintage was only in 2001. And the property it is still in the Western Barossa, in the Seppeltsfield sub-region, just a little bit outside the Seppeltsfield vineyard and winery area. A man called Keith Henschke, spelled with a T, as different from the Henschkes from Eden Valley. Keith Henschke had a farm out there, and he bought the next door neighbour's vineyard, a little vineyard there, which he now calls Clos Otto. And he then expanded that vineyard to create the big vineyard, which is today Hentley Farm. The amazing thing was how quickly this planting became really mature and producing really serious wines, from the sort of wines you'd expect to see from older vineyards. They've obviously got their viticulture very right. So that's their main game, is big, full-bodied Western Barossa reds. So they also make Riesling, they make a few other white wines, but the Riesling, of course, comes from Eden Valley. And most of the Barossa floor producers, that is, wineries that are based on the floor of the Barossa Valley, which is relatively low altitude. If they want to make Riesling these days, they usually either grow or buy grapes from the Eden Valley, which is much higher. It's about 300 or 400 metres higher than the Barossa floor, and therefore cooler, and therefore much more suited to white grapes. This wine is made from several vineyards in the Eden Valley, which have been blended together to produce this wine. The winemaker Andrew Quinn describes it as a dry style with citrus fruit and a delicate underlying tropical lift. So he's obviously sourced several vineyards to blend them to get the result that he wants there, and it's a very good wine indeed. So what does this Hentley Farm Riesling taste like? Let's have a go at it. Light straw yellow colour, as you'd expect in a young Riesling. 2020 vintage, very young, very floral, very fragrant. It has that marvellous Eden Valley character, which is like potpourri, like dried flowers, and a touch of citrus there as well, maybe a little bit of mandarin lurking in the background. Lemon blossoms, perhaps. It's more the floral thing than the fruit thing. Pretty nice nose, I've got to say. Very fragrant, very lifted, very clean and fresh. Let's have a taste. And that is a big mouthful of flavour. That is a lot of flavour. It's quite a broad, full style of Riesling. There's a lot of richness to it, quite a bit of weight to it. It tastes to me like a wine which is higher alcohol than it is. It's only 11.8% alcohol. You can't always tell from the way it tastes how much alcohol is going to be in it. It tastes like a wine made from nice ripe grapes. And a lot of body, a lot of weight, a lot of richness, volume of flavour. The acidity's still there, no problem. It's very fresh and crisp, and the length of flavour is very good. But it's not a tight, compact wine. It's more of a mouth-filling wine. Very good indeed. So how do we rate this wine, this Hentley Farm Eden Valley Riesling? We scored it 95 out of 100, which is a very strong score. It's a gold ribbon score, and it's a top rank wine because it was rated number 1 out of 18 Rieslings from the Eden Valley in the 2020 vintage that we tasted. We said drink it now until 2030, so in other words a 10-year drinking window. It will last longer than that, I'm sure, but for optimum results, that's pretty much the window that we'd recommend. So we always recommend a food match for these wines, and this one, pretty much anything from the sea would go well with a wine like this. A young, fresh South Australian Riesling, terrific with fish of all sorts. The classic thing in South Australia is to have King George whiting, which is the local whiting. So I'd recommend you do your whiting au meunier, which means that you use the juices of the pan in which you fried the fish, plenty of butter. You use the butter to help fry the fish. Then afterwards you deglaze those pan juices with some lemon juice or some white wine and throw in parsley, and there you have it. You pour that over the fish and you have a beautiful dish. Chuck a bit of vegetables or a bit of salad with it and you have a great meal. Cheers to that.